Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today for our topic of intermittent fasting. This is the next topic in our series that we've been going through on fat storage versus burning fat as energy in our metabolism. Okay. My name is Linnea Baker. I am a board certified family nurse practitioner. And as you guys know, I've been utilizing the Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung for a lot of the information I'm getting on this topic right now. Okay. So what is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is actually periods of fasting where you don't eat anything and you don't drink anything that has calories or sugar or artificial sweeteners in it for a period of time and between your normal eating patterns. So that may be something like you're not eating overnight and then you're eating during the day. So period of not eating anything or drinking anything that has calories in it. There's many different types, okay? And for purposes of this presentation, I want to focus on the shorter fasting windows, which are 24 hours or less. Personally, what my practice has been for myself is I fast daily from 12 to 16 hours, and I do a once a week 24-hour fast. This is what works great for my body, and this is what I've built up towards. This isn't something you just start with, you build up towards it. So we want to talk a little bit about the history of how the amount of eating, the different meals we eat and snacking has evolved. And during the pre-agricultural era, about 2/3 of what humans ate in their diet consisted of animal foods. Well, then about 10,000 years ago, we had an agricultural revolution, and that made food more readily available. With that, we started eating about 2 to 3 times per day. Today's Western American civilization, our country, now has a term called diabesity, and that is obesity and diabetes because they do go hand in hand, and it is an epidemic in the United States. We now know that the timing and frequency of meals is just as important as what we are eating. So let's talk a little bit about 12-hour fast and how this used to be normal. This is what we used to do routinely without thinking about it. We would normally eat, we would normally have a 12-hour fasting period, which the majority of that was when we were sleeping. And then that was considered a 12-hour window of eating was a normal eating pattern, okay? And a lot of people would eat 3 meals a day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They would break fast with a smaller breakfast. And this was really normalized and standard up until the 1970s, okay? In 1977, what changed? Well, the USDA put out their first publication of dietary guidelines for Americans. And when they did this publication, it recommended a higher carb and low-fat diet. But what happened when this happened was that higher carb diet created a lot higher levels of insulin. And we know that insulin equals fat storage. And when we are storing fat, we cannot burn it as energy. And so that causes weight gain, okay? We know that every food we eat, except for healthy fats, is converted to glucose, which is a sugar in the blood. And even protein is converted into glucose, okay? We don't eat healthy fats by themselves, so anything we're eating pretty much is getting turned into glucose for energy storage. Then meal frequency. By the early 2000s, meal frequency has increased to 6 times per day, guys. 3 meals a day plus 3 snacks per day. We're eating all the time, guys, which means our insulin levels are always up. And we know that when the insulin levels are up, we're gaining weight, which leads to obesity because we are burning what we're eating as immediate energy, the glucose. And remember, we can store the long-term energy. The fat cells can have all the extra glucose stored in it for long-term energy. It's like going to the freezer in the basement. So fasting windows that are 12 hours long are really a great prevention strategy, and they're also a great starting point to build up and to just experiment with this. When we're looking at reversing weight gain and having an impact on metabolic disease like type 2 diabetes and fatty liver, you actually need a slightly longer fast to better improve that, which would be closer to like a 16-hour fast. So when we talk about a 16-hour fast, we're talking about no food or drinks with any kind of calories in them for 16 hours of fasting. And then we have an 8-hour eating window. In this practice, many people will skip breakfast and just eat 2 meals. Others eat 3 meals. It's something that's really easy to do this daily in your routine, and you choose the times that you want that window to work with your schedule. And it does support slow and steady weight loss. So for me, I typically have one larger meal and clean, healthy meal. And then I do something like a healthy smoothie protein shake with my supplements in it. So I get a very robust, nutritious drink since I'm not eating as much during the day. And I'm not hungry, guys. And then I'll do something small like bone broth or something in the evening. So the circadian rhythm, we hear this a lot. And the definition of a circadian rhythm is a repetitive, predictable, cyclic change in behaviors and hormones over a 24-hour period. And really, circadian rhythm impacts and affects almost all our hormones. So that would include our cortisol levels, which you hear me talk about a lot, our parathyroid hormone, our growth hormone, insulin for sure. It also impacts our ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, and leptin, which is our satiety or fullness hormone. So when we talk about circadian rhythms, we now know, and I've said this earlier, it's not only what we eat and how much we eat, but when we eat that matters and impacts long-term health outcomes, okay? So why is this? Well, let's talk about insulin and nighttime eating. When we eat the largest meal in the evening, which typically in the American Western diet, we eat a larger dinner, we have a smaller breakfast, a little bit smaller lunch, and then in the American Western diet, what's normal in our culture is to have a larger meal at night with our family. Well, when we eat that larger meal at night, that meal causes a larger rise in insulin than it would earlier in the day. So say you have a piece of pizza in the evening for dinner with your family. Well, if you had that piece of pizza at lunchtime, that same piece of pizza will not cause your insulin to rise as much if you ate it earlier in the day than if you eat it at night. Insulin spikes higher in the evening, okay? And because of this, we know that obesity is really a hormone imbalance, not a caloric imbalance, okay? We also can see this in night shift workers where they're gaining weight and becoming obese. And there's also some research about the cortisol levels in night shift workers and how that contributes to weight gain as well. When we talk about ghrelin and hunger patterns, we know that hunger follows a circadian rhythm. I did talk about hunger last week. So if you didn't get to see that topic, there was some really great information, things that I have read and learned along the way that really surprised myself and I've implemented in my own health routine. So hunger does follow a circadian rhythm, and you can go watch that if you haven't seen it yet. And really, if hunger was due to lack of food, we'd be consistently hungry every time we wake up in the morning. Now, I used to be the person that was hungry in the middle of the night, hungry and grazing in the evening, and hungry when I woke up first thing in the morning. But since I've gotten my nutrition on track and I'm fueling my body with the right nutrition sources, so my body is getting the fuel it needs, and I'm more in tune to my body and feeding it what it needs and only eating when I'm hungry, and I've implemented some other tools in myself. Well, I wake up and I'm not hungry for a very long time. Sometimes I'll forget to eat until the afternoon. Part of it's my intermittent fasting. Sometimes I get so busy, I'm like, oh, I forgot to eat because I'm not hungry. Okay. So hunger is not just due to lack of food, because I would be waking up after not eating all night and I'd be starving if that were the case. We know that usually breakfast is our smallest meal, not the largest meal of the day. And we know that ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, is lowest at 8 in the morning and it's highest at 8 o'clock at night, which is crazy because that's when our insulin spikes more. So when we fast, we can actually lower our ghrelin hunger hormone just from fasting. And then timing the last meal of the day is important. We don't want to force ourselves to eat when we're not hungry, and we don't want to eat late at night. I was really bad about this for a long time. We said that eating later in the day, into the evening, we have a higher spike of our insulin release. It's higher for the same amount of food and the same exact food we would have eaten earlier in the day. We're going to get a bigger insulin spike in the evening than we would for that same meal earlier in the day. So really the best time to eat your largest meal is midday, which is about noon to 3 o'clock. So I have shifted that in my own routine. I've been able to do that with my lifestyle now. And my body loves that I eat my healthy, nutritious meal, my bigger meal of the day, midday. I have something very light in the evening. It may be a smoothie. It may be a bone broth. And I have a nutritious packed smoothie protein shake when I break fast in the late morning, early afternoon, however, my timing is with that. But my body is just thriving now compared to what it used to do. And I never would have thought that. I never would have thought that because this is so different than I used to be. So who should not fast? Children under 18 years old should definitely never fast because the risk of malnutrition during their peak developmental time is too high. Okay. Children have always been excluded from fasting for different religious and cultural traditions because we do not want any kind of malnutrition during a critical time in their development. And that was from Dr. Fung, pages 181 to 183 in his complete guide to fasting. Also, Dr. Fung says pregnant and breastfeeding women should not fast. Totally agree. And that's fasting's contraindicated in pregnant and breastfeeding women because it can create a nutrient deficiency that can impact the development of the fetus in utero, as well as impact growth development and slow down growth development in the infant who's breastfeeding. So this is not the time to fast. This is when you need good nutrition. Your demands on your body are different when you're pregnant and breastfeeding, and you should never fast. And then persons who are severely malnourished or underweight should never fast. And so Dr. Fung says that if your BMI is less than 20, the risk of complications increases significantly, and you should not fast. Now, persons who need to use caution when fasting and need to consult their doctor or healthcare provider first prior to starting any kind of nutrition dietary program changes, and especially if you're thinking of fasting, consult your doctor first. If you're taking routine medications, consult your healthcare provider or physician first. If you're taking routine medications before you start any dietary or fasting program, certain medications are impacted by food, whether you're taking food or withholding food. So you need to check with your healthcare provider who knows you best. Remember, we always say do no harm. We want to be safe. I'm giving you education and verbiage and tools to help you be empowered to go have these conversations with your personal healthcare provider. But in order to be safe and do this correctly, you need to have their guidance because they do know you best. And this is not one size fits all. Everybody has different needs, and your healthcare provider will know how to adjust things or give you the guidance of what's best for your situation. Now, type 1 or type 2 diabetes, you have to consult your healthcare provider or physician managing your diabetes before changing any eating or dietary practices, and especially before starting any fasting protocol. And that's because your medications may need to be adjusted. And we don't want, when you're getting medications for type 1 or type 2 diabetes, that's based on what your current eating pattern is. And the provider that's prescribing that needs to be aware of what's going on and what you're wanting to do, because they may need to make adjustments and they need to decide if this is something that's safe and beneficial for your particular case. If you have GERD or gastroesophageal reflux disease, fasting can actually make this worse on occasion because we're not eating food during the fasting window, which could make the stomach acid increase. Now, it's a little bit conflicting because we know that if we lose weight, we can improve GERD or gastroesophageal reflux. And we also know that some people actually have increased GERD when they eat food. So everyone's a little different. Just to be safe, get with your healthcare provider to find out what's best for you. And then also gout. Gout's an inflammatory arthritis condition. It's caused by excess urine acid crystals that conglomerate or collect in the joints, and uric acid's actually eliminated in the urine. And when we're fasting, this process goes down. So we don't want to create more problems with gout. You just need to check with your healthcare provider to see what's best for your particular case. So Dr. Fung's intensive dietary fasting best practices, he says when he's working, what he recommends for his clients, and of course, he's monitoring them very closely. He's their healthcare provider, and they're being monitored in a clinic setting and having labs and their meds adjusted, and he's watching their labs and different other things like blood pressure and things, and giving lots of education to his patients. But with Dr. Fung, he says that water, tea, or black coffee are permitted during a fasting window. He says you can add 1 to 2 teaspoons of cream or coconut oil to your coffee during your fasting window. He does not allow any artificial sweeteners. I will be talking about that topic separately, but it can cause insulin spikes and issues with just how your hormones work in your body. So he says no go on that. He does say that you can use lemon juice, mint, cinnamon, and other spices if you want while you're fasting, and homemade bone broth is allowed. Okay. So in summary, short intermittent fasting protocols are 24 hours or less, and they can help with slow and steady weight loss, as well as impact metabolic disease, such as type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease. A 12-hour intermittent fasting window is a good starting place. We don't want to go too big at once because our bodies are not used to using our fat storage as long-term energy use. We've been in a sugar-adapted state using immediate and intermediate fuel stores, so we have to build up. But 12 hours is a good starting point for prevention, as well as starting on a fasting protocol. A 16-hour fasting window with an 8-hour eating window is great for weight loss. This can be done a few times per week or daily. And fasting is always contraindicated. So we never use fasting in children under 18 years old. We never do fasting for pregnant or breastfeeding women. No fasting for persons who are malnourished or underweight. And we said that you need to use caution and consult your physician or healthcare provider first. If you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, if you're taking routine medications, if you have gout or gastroesophageal reflux disease or GERD, you need to check with your healthcare provider first that's managing that, so that you make sure that you're doing things safely and what's in your best interest for your specific health condition, and you're not doing any harm, okay? So what's next? We're going to do fasting for heart health. There's information and research out there about how intermittent fasting can impact your heart. And if you didn't watch those other videos that preceded this one, we are building weekly on this topic. So I encourage you to go back. The first video in the series was debunking calories in and calories out. You guys know I'm on a mission to positively impact your health and wellness through education and coaching to create generational health and a health span that equals your lifespan. I'm very passionate about helping people get on a health journey. So if you're frustrated, if you don't know where to start, if you need help with verbiage or guidance to talk with your personal healthcare provider, if you're not sure if this is for you or not, just reach out to me, private message me, comment below, and we can schedule a free health consult, and I can go over things with you personally and talk with you more about it. Okay. And just remember, The Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung and with Jimmy Moore is the book I've been utilizing for a lot of the topics. Really, most of the information I'm presenting comes from this. I'm only taking snippets from this book. There's so much more valuable information. So if this is interesting to you, I highly encourage you to get the book. I got mine on Amazon. It is written for people who are non-medical. This is to empower people to get more education about their health and some other things that might be beneficial to you. And, obviously with caution, in those certain areas that we discussed earlier. But if you want more information and you're excited about this topic and you want to know where to get more, this is the book I would recommend. And this is where I'm getting a lot of this information from, guys. So I really appreciate you giving me some of your valuable time to watch this. I hope it brought you value and gave you some education and tools in your back pocket to have that conversation with your personal healthcare provider. I really look forward to getting to talk with you guys again soon and present another great topic. And until then, you guys stay safe.